going to be making our crumb cake, the one that everybody is enjoying and loving and can't get enough of. So we're going to make our crumb cake. We start with a 1/2 pound, 2 sticks of butter. I always use salted butter when I bake. I never use unsalted butter, but then I don't add extra salt to any recipe that I make. So I start with the salted butter, and I'm going to whip it up until it's light. I turn it off and scrape down the sides. And then I slowly add in the 1 cup of sugar. So we have 2 sticks of butter, 1/2 pound, and 1 cup of sugar. One other thing I also use is fine ground sugar. I don't use regular granulated sugar when I bake, so that's another thing. And then I'm going to add 2 eggs, one of them at a time. And keep that going while I add the other egg. One other thing that I also do most of the time when I bake is everything is at room temperature. So the eggs have been allowed to sit out, the butter has been sitting out. Actually, the butter was out overnight, and the eggs have been out since early this morning, so they've been out for about 5-6 hours just to get to room temperature. And scrape that down and beat it until it's well mixed. Now the recipe calls for 1 teaspoonful of vanilla. I never measure. So here's a little bit of vanilla that I pour in. And then we have to add 1 cup of sour cream. I scoop it out into the measuring cup with a spoon so that it gets completely filled, because otherwise there can be some air bubbles or voids in the cup, and this way you make sure there are no voids in the cup, because you want that 1 cup of sour cream. The other thing when you're baking is don't change your measuring cups. If you use 1 cup, use the same cup for everything. If you have to wash it out in between, wash it out, but use the same measuring cup. Something I learned from Uncle Steve is it doesn't matter the size of the measuring cup. If you use a coffee cup, you can use a coffee cup as long, you use 1 cup of sugar, 1 cup of flour. As long as the same cup is used, the measurements will be equal. You might have to adjust your teaspoons or your baking soda or baking powder with that, but that doesn't make any difference. So we're going to add in the 1 cup of sour cream. Okay, now I have in this bowl 2 cups of flour. Okay, to that I am going to add 1 teaspoon, half a teaspoon, I'm sorry, this is the baking soda. A 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. And 1 teaspoon of baking powder. My hands don't always work, as Emma tells me. 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay. I don't do dishes, so they get put aside for my dishwasher to make or to take care of. Okay. And then slowly add the flour. Sorry. until it's completely incorporated. This batter is thick, and it's going to stay thick. And that's the batter. Now, the next thing we're going to do while this mixes a little bit is butter the pan. While the cake is mixing a little bit, what I always do is use the butter wrapper to grease the pan, because the butter that was left on the wrapper can get used and it doesn't get your hand all greasy. So I'm greasing, and then I'm going to flour the pan. This pan is a 10 by 15 inch pan. And I use flour to flour the pan. And then we take the batter out. And then we scrape the batter into the pan, and like I said, this batter's very, very thick, so it's going to get spread out. It is really delicious though. Like, I could eat this entire pot of batter just by itself, but I suppose with eggs in it you're not supposed to. That never bothered me. I forgot to mention before is that I always used unbleached flour when I cook. What's the sense of having it bleached other than to process it even more? So I always use unbleached flour. So in here I have 3 cups of unbleached flour, which is what I also use there. I'm adding 1 cup of sugar, and I just stir it up a little bit to combine it. To mix it all together, blend it all together, and I have a 1/2 cup firmly packed brown sugar. I like the flavor the brown sugar adds to it. I think it makes it a little tastier. The brown sugar has to be completely mixed in, otherwise it'll get hard in the lumps when you add the butter. So you have to make sure that the brown sugar is mixed in very well. And then we get in 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Okay, and once again, combine all of that. Perfect, right? Looks good. Make sure everything is mixed in, everything's combined. Okay, and then we're going to slowly, the butter has been melted, but it's not melted to the point that it's very, very hot. We have 2 sticks of butter here, and you could see some of it is still, you know, along the edges. This butter is cooled a little bit. If you make the butter too hot, it'll crystallize the sugar and cook it before you want it to cook. So you slowly add the butter. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to be using a whisk. I use a fork. Slowly add the butter in and stir it until your crumbs form. And that's what's going to happen. So you slowly combine the butter in until your crumbs form. And then once your crumbs form, you put it on the top of the cake. Make sure the butter is all incorporated. You see how the crumbs are forming? And like I said, if the butter is too hot, it'll crystallize the sugar and cook it. You do not want that to happen. So you make sure your butter is a little cooler before you do that. Oh, these are coming out perfectly. Just the way we want them. And keep stirring until all that flour is mixed in and all your crumbs are formed properly. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is take the cake and start to put the crumbs onto the cake. And once all the crumbs are done and on, you put this in an oven at 350 degrees for about 1 hour. Or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. And that's it. And there you have our crumb cake. You put a toothpick in the center, if it comes out clean, it's done. It is done. You can also tell by the smell of it that it's done. And the last step is the powdered sugar. I just sprinkle it on like this. Goes all over, but it's delicious.